The church is and has always been a hospital. It has always been the place where you come to commune with people who believe like you do, to fellowship with people who believe like you do. It has always been a hospital for sick people. If you are sick, you come to church, you get prayer, and you get healed, you get delivered, you get set free. That was the objective. And I started seeing people my age, older and younger, they were leaving the sanctuary because of the various things that were happening or had happened while they were there. When you start talking about leaders who pinpoint certain individuals and make them the target of assault, whether it be physical or verbal, because both of them exist, they pinpoint individuals to make examples to other parishioners that this is what you should and should not do. Or they utilize opportunities where you should be a cheerful giver to make it a point of you giving everything that you have, whether you have for yourself or not. All of these things were causing people to not only stumble, but to consider that the church was not for them because it was taking more than it was actually giving. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Freeman, and if you haven't been here before, this segment is entitled Get Healed with Me. It has been a crazy journey for me expressing and learning and being open and honest about some of the things that I have experienced in my salvation walk, in my time within the church, in my time in ministry. I have found a new way of being able to express myself and bring light to areas that have otherwise been ignored. Today's episode is so important because there's a culture that has been created within our churches that has kind of put us in a bad light when it comes to those who desire to be saved and when it comes to those who are saved and no longer want anything to do with our churches, with church period, with the community, with anything. Like most of you, I've had experiences within my walk that have been debilitating. I have been in services and treated as if I was cattle. I have been verbally abused, physically abused, mentally abused, financially abused, all within the four walls of the sanctuary. See, the funny thing is, growing up, I was taught that the church is a place of healing. It is supposed to be the place that you come to get delivered, to experience God in a completely new way. And when I first started out, I was looking at the people who were in the pulpit and some of the people in the pews as if they had the magic wand or the key that was going to unlock every spiritual door that I needed to be unlocked. I put faith in those individuals. Now, this was in my youth. I know now that that shouldn't have been the case. They weren't the answer. They were just a gateway. And I get that. But it didn't take away from the fact that while I was searching for God, those people were, I was not fixated on them, but so intrigued by their walk that I desired to walk in that same type of power and authority and anointing, not realizing that majority of what I was seeing was just a fine reenactment of something that they had seen in the past. When it comes to Christendom, right? When it comes to our walk with God, oftentimes we confuse relationship with God with the approval of man. We look at individuals and we say, man, they really got this together, so they got to know what I should do next. And you start putting so much faith and emphasis into these individuals that eventually you start to lose yourself. I'm not saying that everybody's journey is the same, but when it comes to trauma and trauma responses, we've got some similarities, whether we like to admit it or not. My trauma was really centered on the fact that I was willing to follow blindly. Blind submission. If you said it and you were a leader, I just believed you because I was one of those that was taught it's better to obey. Obedience is better than sacrifice, and obey those that have rule over you. Not realizing that there are growth points in your spiritual journey, in your development, that don't require approval or consensus from anyone outside of your person. When God really begins to develop who you are and he gives you, your starts to ground you in your walk, his voice sounds different. You read the Bible differently. You look at things differently, and he ministers to you on a level that will allow you to grow beyond where you are. What I'm finding is when we come into the sanctuary, sometimes, not all the time, but when we come into the sanctuary, sometimes it's easy to keep an individual trapped in a repetitive cycle than to allow them to get healed, to allow them to get delivered, to allow them to get free. As I have grown up, I've realized if I was able to get free when I first started out and actually gone through the process, a lot of the things that I endured, I probably would not have because my perception changed when I was submitted and was able to really go through a healing and deliverance process. And I realized a lot of the things that I believed, a lot of the things that I thought, a lot of the connections that I made were nothing more than opportunities for other individuals to utilize what I had to offer for their own benefit. I'm not saying that all churches are the same. I'm not saying that, every place and every time this is what's happening. But what I am saying is anytime you are in a place where you are unable to move beyond the thing that harmed you, that hurt you, then more than likely you are in something that you probably should run from. Any type of church that does not promote your healing, does not promote your growth, does not promote your development, both spiritually and naturally, it's not a good place for you to be in. So, my journey, let's talk about me because I don't want you to get offended, but let's talk about me. My journey started out with a young girl who was insanely just all in biblical truths, principles, Bible text study. I was just engulfed by it. I got saved when I was 10 years old. And some people say you can't do that because you're too young. But I'm telling you, I just believed in my whole heart that God had touched me, had touched this body. I mean, I remember when I received the Lord, when I and accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I was taken up into a spiritual, um, I don't know how to explain it. I was caught somewhere I've never been. And it was so profound to me that I linked the incident or I linked that experience with what I had on. So every time I went to church, I would put on the same outfit. I would put on the same clothes. I would look for the same things, not knowing that it had nothing to do with what I had on. It had everything to do with what I had received in that service, in that moment. God had really made a deposit. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm learning, right? Because I'm in church and they're telling me, no, it's not your clothes, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm learning. But as I started to progress the church that I was at, it seemed like I hit a ceiling. I hit a place where I wasn't growing anymore. I had stopped and I was hungry. I felt like I was starving. And I was reading everything that I could. I was studying every commentary. I was, in the Strong's books, Greek and Hebrew translation, you name it. I was trying to get it. And as I'm perusing through the word, I started to see that a lot of the things that I was reading, it wasn't being implemented in the church that I was in at that time. And the more that I look at it, I'm almost confident that there were some other things that were going on at that time, that I had no control over. There was nothing that I could have done about it. But in the same token, I knew that God was moving me from the church that I got saved at, and He was trying to get me somewhere else. But I did not know that my internal my emotions, my misunderstanding of what God was trying to do was going to lead me to a place where I would be um overrun by what I really wanted, which was a deeper relationship with God. Instead of running to a place where I got a deeper relationship, I actually ended up in a place where I was how do I say it? I was physically serving, trying to spiritually earn. I hope that makes sense to you. I was physically serving, trying to spiritually earn. It got to a point where I believed that my acts of service, kind of similar to the whole dress thing or, the outfit being associated with, the deposit that I had received, I started to correlate or attach my service to salvation and what God would and would not do for me. And as I began to lean into that, I started giving money, I was giving time, and before I knew it, charisma had gotten lost in the service. I got lost in serving, I got lost in another individual. And I know that a lot of people aren't going to take too kind to what I'm getting ready to say next, and that's okay. But there is a thin line between serving and obsession. There's a thin line between, um, um, you know, uh, the armor bearer and adjutancy and spiritual manipulation and all of those things. It kind of goes hand in hand. And if you're not careful, you will become the front runner for someone else and dying, with them when they die. Once they're consumed, you're consumed. Once they're finished, you're finished. So I mean, it kind of I ran into a place where I didn't know it was going to cause me some mental, some spiritual, and physical anguish. So I went through serving, right? I went through serving and realized that my acts of service were becoming a point of bondage for me. It got to the point where I was so unsatisfied that the prophetic became another alternate escape. Right? So I'm done with the attire. I'm done with that. I understand that that is not, something that is applicable. Then we get into, you know, forget the attire, is the service. I have not been able or wasn't able at that point to dismantle that ideology because so many people were of the same mindset. So many people were fat. You should be honored to serve. You should be honored to hold the cup, hold the water, hold the Bible. You should be honored. And it was drummed in, like pressed in my mind that this is something that needed to happen, that was supposed to happen. After all of that, things started to shift. Things started to shift. And as I'm losing myself, I started seeing that those that I was in the company of noticed it and they harnessed or they took full advantage of my uncertainty. Now, when I say took full advantage, I don't want you to think I'm talking about anything egregious. I mean that it went from serving to asking permission to go places, being told what to wear, who to talk to, who not to talk to, whose church to go to, whose church not to go to. I mean, it just went down a rabbit hole of the loss of my autonomy. And as I began to lose my autonomy, I also started to realize that I had no idea who I was, what I wanted to do, or what I was capable of doing. The danger of this is in 2026, there are so many people out there who are experiencing some of the same things. Maybe not in the same way, but same spirit, right? The spirit of control, the spirit of manipulation, trying to make you believe that you're not equipped enough to be without them. You're not strong enough to make a decision for yourself or to decide whether you want to partake in something or not partake in it. There is this culture within our churches, that kind of removes the ability of the individual to say yes or no for themselves. And one thing that I'm realizing in starting this podcast and talking to my friends and talking to other parishioners, that I wasn't the only person who was experiencing that or who had experienced it. And there were so many other people after I started talking that were ashamed that they allowed themselves to get roped up in such a, I don't know, a tough situation where literally they were being run by the leader of whatever church they were a part of. One thing that I have heard a commonality within the conversations that I was having was the fact that um, there were some who were a part of church houses, a part of ministries, and they were serving, they were on the ministerial team, praise and worship, whatever have you. And ultimately, they left the church because of some of the things that they were enduring. It was one of the hardest things for me to stomach, not only because I had lived through it, but because I understood that it was a tactic of the enemy to minimize or to diminish the power and the potency of the church. The church is and has always been a hospital. It has always been the place where you come to commune with people who believe like you do, to fellowship with people who believe like you do. It has always been a hospital for sick people. If you are sick, you come to church, you get prayer, and you get healed, you get delivered, you get set free. That was the objective. And I started seeing people my age, older and younger, they were leaving the sanctuary because of the various things that were happening or had happened while they were there. When you start talking about leaders who pinpoint certain individuals and make them the target of assault, whether it be physical or verbal, because both of them exist, they pinpoint individuals to make examples to other parishioners that this is what you should and should not do. Or they utilize opportunities where you should be a cheerful giver to make it a point of you giving everything that you have, whether you have for yourself or not. All of these things were causing people to not only stumble, but to consider that the church was not for them because it was taking more than it was actually giving. Heartbroken. You hear me? Heartbroken. I realized in those conversations that one, I am blessed, right? Because even though I experienced a lot of things within the church, it broke me, it hurt me, it traumatized me, but it did not take me away from God. It didn't separate me from Him. If anything, it fortified my relationship with Him and gave me the understanding that people are fallible. And even though we say that, we're doing it in the name of God, there are some who are merely just trying to build their own persona and bolster who they want to be in the company of individuals because they feel depleted in other areas of their life. This entire episode is for the individual who is contemplating or who has decided that they no longer want to go to church. They no longer want to be a part of a ministry because of some of the things that I have mentioned and things that I have not mentioned. There is a variation of different things that happen in the four walls of the church. And when I say four walls, I'm talking about within the congregation, whether it be from the leadership or the pew members. There are so many things: molestation, um, bullying, um, 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 the imposition of uh, mental health. I mean, it's so many things that are happening. But my point today is consider that the people that harmed you are flawed, but God is not. It's not in his nature to take away your right to choose whom you will serve. It is not in his nature to make you feel obligated to forsake what he has blessed you with in an effort to prove that you're for him. He's given you talents. He's given you abilities. He's given you the wherewithal and the know-how to do certain things with your life. It is not his design that you feel trapped, that you feel uncertain and insecure in your ability to create and mold and build and enhance the kingdom. However, you have been designated to do that. I'm realizing that praise and worship and the music department and preaching are not the only places that God requires us to serve in. It is not the only place that you can serve. There are so many aspects of God that need be expressed in the sanctuary, but we have lost sight of those areas because we are so familiar with only a select few that we feel is most important. Today, I'm telling you, in my little short time with you, that there is more to God. There is more for you to experience and learn and live through. Don't allow some individuals to stop you from being a part of the kingdom of God, being a part and being among true believers. There are people out here who genuinely believe that what you have to offer is valuable and who are not looking to take advantage of you and want you to flourish the way that God intended. So, today, this is my little testimony, and this is my little talk, and my little shed the light moment. This is a topic that we're going to go further into in the days to come. I want you to do me a favor. I need you to hit the like, subscribe button, and I want you to share this with somebody that you feel like would benefit from this conversation. Listen, I'm not here to argue with anybody. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad, and I'm not here to dismantle the church. The church is important, but we have to acknowledge where we have fallen short so that we can move forward and give people what they are entitled to. We got to represent, because if we don't represent, then we're going to lose out and miss out on a generations that could potentially cause the kingdom to be enlarged and enhanced. So I love you all. Come back again next week. Come back again next week because we're going to continue to talk about this because there is so much that we have to say. All right. I love y'all. And prayerfully, I'll talk to you again soon.